Well, that was a great debut, Shivan.
Thank you.
I heard the drum playing, but I didn't see. Where's the drum player? Oh, there he is. Okay.
Prabhuji.
Were you playing the drum, Benita?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Oh, wow. Okay. So what do you think of your youngest son now?
I did this. I based this song, kirtan off of a song, a old Indian song called "Leke Jo Kha Tujhe."
It was a nice kind of catchy, nice catchy tune. Good choice. Now we got your father and mother there, and we're in your house. Why don't you read the verse and the first paragraph of the purport, just the first paragraph, and make some comments. And then we've been having good success last few weeks, just making it free flowing. So invite anybody Anybody to jump in and add any additional comments that you like.
Sure, Bhai. Today we are reading first canto, second chapter, fifth verse. Munya sadhu pustoham bhavdi loka mangalam yatkrita krishna samparshno yenatmasu prasiddhati. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. O sages, I have been justly questioned by you. Your questions are worthy because they relate to the Lord Krishna and so are of relevance to the world's welfare. Only questions of this sort are capable of completely satisfying the self. Purport. Since it has been stated herein before that in the Bhagavatam, the absolute truth is to be known, the questions of the sages of Naimisharanya are proper and just because they pertain to Krishna, who is the Supreme Personality of the Godhead, the absolute truth. In Bhagavad Gita, 15 chapter 15th verse, the personality of Godhead says that in all the Vedas, there is nothing but the urge for searching after him, Lord Krishna. Thus, the questions that pertain to Krishna are the sum and substance of all the Vedic inquiries. A very important verse in the context of this reading that we do every Sunday. I think I'll take a step back in first chapter when we were reading the ninth verse. The translation was that we have a lot of questions and we want to hear from you the things that are relevant and also beneficial for their mankind and human race. So I think it takes the narrative to the next steps and asking and reiterating the same message that I've been just questioned by you. Your questions are worthy because they relate to Lord Krishna. If we take a step back and see that what's going on around us, there is so much emphasis on me and mine and on this body. And I think only a sage who is selfless can ask a question like this, that let's talk about a thing that is not only important for me or mine, like my family members, my relatives. We want to hear from you about Krishna because we know that that is the sum and substance. I really liked when Prabhupada mentioned that thus the questions that pertain to Krishna are the sum and substance of all Vedic inquiries. I know that the sixth verse that we are going to read the next week is one of the most important verses, and this sets the prelude so that we can emphasize and focus on the importance of the real dharma. In the previous classes, we talked about the real dharma being understanding the devotion, developing this sense of service, and then above all, develop the love. And it is nearly impossible to do that unless you know the object. And the best way to know the object is to either listen the glories about him, the read, the pastimes, associate with the people who can explain. And even after that, if you don't get it, you ask questions. And I think in the next paragraph, Prabhupada mentions that this society is full of questions and very limited answers. Like there are a lot of questions around you, there are answers around you. But the only reason that the next morning when you begin your day, you again start with another question or a set of questions. So it's a continuous quest that is not ending, and the reason is because people are not understanding the real object of those questions. And that's the result. There is dissatisfaction. One simple example that we talked about a lot, we talked a lot about science, and there is nothing wrong. I think science has done wonders for us. But last 9 months explains the glories of science and then what we can achieve through science. So I rest my case there, and others can can talk about the second paragraph.
Yeah, we we ran across this issue of question and answers earlier in the second verse of this chapter also. Shrota Vyadini Rajanam Ninam Santi Sasha Pashitam Atvatam Griyashu Grayar. And Prabhupada says there that there are many, many Shrota Vyadini, thousands and thousands of subject matters for hearing in the human society. But basically it's divided into two. The subject matter of the Grihastras and the subject matter of the Griyamadis. The Grihastras are those who maintain a household based on the principle of God or Krishna consciousness, and the Griyamadis maintain their household in the principle of jealousy of others, keeping up with the Joneses, having parity as far as the car they drive, the house, the income, the job, the status. So the Griyamadis are always asking, what do others have that's more than me? That who wears a dress size that's smaller than me? Who has a smaller waist than me? Who has the latest car, a more recent model than me? So they're always focused to the side. But life is a race. If you want to be successful, you have to focus straight ahead on the goal. People think that the goal is just to pull ahead of their neighbors in terms of material consumption. But there's two problems with that. One is that when you're not focused ahead, you're not moving ahead. And the other is that what's the ultimate benefit of having a lot of goods? It's not true that whoever dies with the most toys wins. It's a falsity. It's actually a joke that people put on their caps and their T-shirt. When people see that, they laugh because they realize the futility of just living for stuff. So what other comments do we have that like to pitch in there and add to what Kapilji has said?
Well, I would like to add
Go ahead, George.
my obeisance to everyone. Sorry, I'm a little bit late. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Prabhupada.
There are some people, when they see that T-shirt and they see someone laughing about it, they say, "What's so funny?" This is not a joke. This is the reason for my existence. I loved what you said, Kapil. I just came from speaking in my church about love of God. I haven't spoken in my actual church where I used to be the bishop and talk all the time in 12 years. And so I felt like I had, a lot of new material, if you will, some things to talk about, because the first great commandment in Christianity is to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy strength, and with all thy mind. And it's not really addressed very much not in the Mormon church. And, I think I was a little disappointed with how this talk went. Of course, you can't really tell when people have masks on, like it just was a little bit disconcerting. Caru, maybe you're accustomed to that by now. I'm not. But one thing is that you do have to have a continuously inquiring attitude, and with like a sense of wonder, because the mysteries of God are full of wonder, and the Bhagavatam will bring us into a deeper appreciation. But that whole inquiry can be shut down if you are in a system of thought that is presenting that we have got all the answers right here. And people can adopt the view, well, I'm being given everything that I need, and then you lose the predisposition. I think it's a natural predisposition to inquire and find out more, to be asking questions, to look for the right source of authority, to learn more. And I think that unfortunately can lead to a kind of a dryness. Because I don't think I can ultimately, I was reading the beginning of teachings of Lord Chaitanya, where in very concise form, Srila Prabhupada is trying to explain the relationship between Radha and Krishna. And I don't think I will ever understand that. I think it's so tantalizing to be filled with the wonder of it. I'm really rambling away here. I think an inquiring attitude is one of the things that really sets devotees apart. And the more you wonder, the more you can actually learn. If you're not wondering, there's nowhere to go.
Prabhu, you're on mute.
My question was, when you gave your talk this morning, was there a story in the talk? Did you tell any story?
I told a couple of stories from scripture. I mean, I told you last night about the woman who washed Jesus' feet with her tears and dries them with her hair. I didn't tell any personal story. I also told the Pharisee of the publican and the parable of the Pharisee and the publican, but no.
And what do you think was the reaction? You said you weren't prepared for the reaction.
You know, it's very, very hard. It was difficult for me to have any sense whether anything I was saying was really like landing in the ears of people.
Well, it's not like in a Mormon church service people get up and start dancing and punctuate your remarks with hallelujahs and amens, is it? Anyway.
Right, and there's no dancing.
So it would be hard anyway. I mean, you know, even the best of sermons, it would be hard to tell how it was received, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and maybe it was just kind of my insecurity of really kind of going outside the boundaries of what is like a normal subject matter for a talk, that I felt that it was like if I had to interpret what the composite reaction was, it was kind of a weird talk. She's talking about learning to love God and to be like that woman in that story who she doesn't say anything. She doesn't ask for anything. She just came to love the Lord and to serve him for no reason, unmotivated, just because her heart was full of love for Jesus. And to me, it's just it's like real bhakti being practiced right there in the New Testament. And maybe someone was touched by that. I never, ever, when I speak in public, feel like I did a good job. That's just.
So in terms of questions and answers, were there unspoken questions on the part of the woman and answers given by Jesus, do you think?
No, she just appears.
No, unspoken.
Oh.
Questions of the heart. She obviously had to inquire where was Jesus, right, in order to find him that evening, find whose house he was being hosted in. And so that would be a question of a different sort than the norm. Right. Prabhupada says the birds and the beasts, they're all busy in the matter of question and answers, particularly with regard to eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Where is a place to sleep? Where is something to eat? With whom I'm going to mate? And how am I going to defend myself? So the question that the lady asked, well, where's Jesus going to be tonight, was a different type of question for starters, right?
Yeah. There really is, there's none of that that's expressed. I mean, she just comes in and does those things, and he ends later on by saying, your sins are forgiven thee, but she never asked for forgiveness of her sins. She just came and did those very kind, tender things as a way of service. She was literally worshiping at his lotus feet. Um, I think that is as close to pure love as anything you find in Christian scripture.
Prabhupada says here also in another purport that relates to this issue of questions and answers, he says the businessmen in the market are busy with questions and answers. And then this is for you, Govinda. And so also the lawyers in the court and the students in the schools and colleges. The legislators in the parliament are also busy with questions and answers. And the politicians and the press representatives are all busy with questions and answers. Although they go on making such questions and answers their whole lives, they are not at all satisfied. Satisfaction of the soul can only be attained by question and answers on the subject of Krishna. Is there any instance or trial or speech by anyone, Cicero or anyone, in the legal history, the archives of legalism, where the subject matter of the absolute truth was at least had a glancing acknowledgement that you know of?
I would have to.
Clarence Darrow, anything? Not Clarence Darrow. I guess the William Jennings Bryan would have been the apologist for a theistic point of view.
Yeah, that's a really great question. Abraham Lincoln said in his second release, the house divided between itself cannot stand, which is a quote from the Bible. So he was trying to invoke some kind of divine authority there. I think probably Martin Luther King, but that's not legal. He's a preacher.
So the point the problem makes is that with all the question and answering that's going on, even interspecies, people don't find any satisfaction. It doesn't circle around. It doesn't circle around any particular topic except for the physical necessities of life. But the Srimad Bhagavatam only talks about Krishna. It only talks about the absolute truth. It doesn't mix any other questions or any other inquiries. The Mahabharata, the four Vedas, they're mixed. Dharma, Artha, Karma, Moksha. Mahabharata. We have a volunteer here who studied the Mahabharata as part of her curriculum at University of Pennsylvania, but she never got a sense that Krishna was the supreme, because the Mahabharata is a mixed. There's all kinds of different strains and different currents that go through it. But there's no equivocation in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The Srimad Bhagavatam puts you on notice right from the second verse that this will only be question and answers pertaining to the absolute truth. So how many different conversations go on? Of course, there's the overarching conversation between Sukadeva Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit. But how many other conversations can anybody in this forum bring up, any other series of questions and answers which occurred in the Bhagavatam and the basic gist of them in 25 words or less?
So we have conversation between Vidura and Maitreya.
Very, very big part of the Bhagavatam. Huge part of the Bhagavatam. Can you say a little bit more about that, Amrita Sundari?
Well, I think Vidura, after visiting his pilgrimage places, he comes upon Uddhava, who reveals to him that Lord Krishna gave him knowledge before leaving the planet. And Uddhava wanted to hear it so that he could also come very close to Krishna. And Uddhava says, Maitreya Muni was there and he's senior to me, so out of etiquette, you should listen from him. And when Vidura approaches, it's very interesting. He begins from the point of, why the humans are unhappy. Why, though they are supreme parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord who's all blissful, how come they're unhappy? And why are they struggling to gain these tiny amounts of happiness? in exchange for, perpetual misery? That was his first question. And eventually, of course, he asked about the Lord's powers, his illusory energy, his internal energy, everything.
Good point. Yeah. What else? What other question and answers conversations went along in the Bhagavatam?
I think probably in the 12th canto, in the 11th one, the conversation between Uddhav and the series of questions that were asked by Uddhav is the reiteration of some of the questions that was asked by Arjuna. But I think the examples and also the explanation was a little more detailed.
And who was that? Who was that between Uddhava and who?
Lord Krishna?
Ah, okay. Okay. What other conversation?
There are many in that way. We have Devahuti asking Kapila Muni. We have Vedvyas talking to Narad Muni. Vasudev talking to Narad Muni.
So,
Narad Muni talking to Brahmaji about who is the creator and why he is doing the creation and how he does it, and how it all started for Brahmaji. And then Brahmaji goes on to explain how the Supreme Lord gave him the introspection from within the heart, how to create. And yeah.
excellent. That's a key verse. Tene Brahmarida Adi Moyanti Yatsuryo. Lord Brahma also says, Nabarati Mangam Nisho Palakshate Noe Kvichin Me Manasham Nishakari Yanmeri Shikani Patanti Yatsadpate Yanmeri Dot Kantavadritadari. He explains in the conversation that because I have remained fixed on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, I have never deviated from my duty, and I have also remained fixed in yoga, in connection with the Supreme Lord. He attributes all of his qualities and abilities of character to his meditation upon the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna.
This is
And he
also
was-
the conversation between Yudhishthir and Narad Muni. Yudhishthir Maharaj asking a series of questions. The question that I'm able to recall is asking about Shishupal. And that even after such an enormity, that why he got the gati or the deliverance. And this message about keep remembering and keep him Krishna in, like sometimes devotees maybe accidentally you might there is an instance that you may not have the same faith, or you might not think about Krishna for a moment. But when people are so envious, examples is Shishupal, then I think that conversation was very nice, and then talks about that how you always keep remembering about Krishna.
Yeah, that's good. That's excellent. We talked about that in one of our morning classes recently. Even if you think about, we're encouraged to inquire about Krishna from a favorable perspective. Our inquiries are meant to remove any doubts and pave the way towards service. But Narad explains to Yudhishthira in answer to his inquiry how, even in the case of Kamsa and Sisupal and others, Putana, for instance, even unfavorable question and answers. When is Krishna going to come and kill me? How can I protect myself against Krishna? Even those kinds of questions, even though they're based on concern for one's physical body, still they ended up benefiting the inquirer. You mentioned Kapila and Devahuti. What was the gist of that conversation, Amrita Sundari?
As far as I remember, her underlying main question was, I have enjoyed so much, but still I'm not happy. And in spite of being in association with such a sage as Kardama Muni, how come I don't have desire for devotional service? Now I want to, and show me the path to perfecting this desire of mine of serving the Lord without any motive.
Kapil tells his mother, Ajaram Pasharam Pashum Atmano Kavya Saiva Shrushi Moksha Dharam Upovitam. He indicates to his mother the key to igniting the fire of enthusiasm for devotional service is association. If you find that you're lukewarm about serving the Lord or indifferent, then look at who you're associating with, because they're probably the same way. If you want to take your devotional service to the next level, maybe you need to get rid of some old friends, find some new friends. The principle of association is 60% of success in devotional service. Sat Sange Tyage Vaishnava Charastri Sange Ekashara Krishna Bhaktarara. So Kapila says maybe you should get some new friends.
Then we have Maharaj Nimi asking the Navyogendras a series of questions.
Can you remind us about that?
I think he wants to know the different incarnations of the Lord in different yugas. And he actually asked 9 different sets of questions, and each brother answers them. These are 9 sannyasi brothers who can fly in the space, I think, just like Narad Muni. And they happen upon his assembly, and then King Nimi, who is in line of Maharaj Janak. So he asked these questions. And that's where that verse comes, Kali, Sankirtan verse that we sing, Sangopangastra Parshadam.
In the 11th canto?
In the 11th canto. That's
Krishna,
when he mentioned
Krishna Varnati Sa Krishnam Sangopanga Dajanti Pishu Medasaha.
Yes.
Actually, I think you could quote any verse of the Bhagavatam, and it's part of a question and answer session. So,
I mean, there are endless. Maharaj Jad Bharat and Rahuguna, they have this very philosophical conversation.
Exactly. Yeah. So what 3 types of people do such conversations purify?
All 3. Listening, who is inquiring, who is answering.
And what is it compared to? Is that my rumbling? Is that growling coming from my microphone? Hello?
We can hear you, Prabhuji.
Okay. So the 3 levels of people who are purified by the flow of inquiry, that's compared to what? What's the analogy made?
I don't remember, Prabhuji.
Yat para samsyasuta munyapasha sadhupanati apashisha swadhinapanu sevaya. Is the reference is to the Ganges.
Oh, one who takes a bath in the Ganges.
Well, that's true. That was the verse I was quoting, but the actual reference in this connection is just like the Ganges flows from the spiritual world, and initially it flows through the higher planets, then it flows down to the middle planets, then it flows to the lower planets. So the flow of question and answers about Krishna, it comes from the speaker, such as Sukadeva Goswami, it goes to the listener, like Maharaj Parikshit, and then those who are who are eavesdropping, like Sutta Goswami, they're also benefited. So like the Ganges purifies the upper, the middle, and lower planetary systems, so similarly these conversations also purify the hearer, the inquirer, the speaker. And then there's also a 4th element. There's also a 4th entity that's purified too. Prabhupada mentions the place. Yeah, the place. Most like we visited Rajamundry on one of our recent trips to India, and Rajamundry is the temple, the land that was given by the government, the local government there, for the Hare Krishna temple. The land was a choice piece of land on the Godavari River, downtown Rajamundry. And then the temple president there, Satya Gopinath, he gave us a little mini tour of the area, and we went to this place where Lord Chaitanya spoke to Ramananda Roy right there on the banks of the Godavari River. And that became a tirtha just because of the conversation that took place there. In fact, the holy men who inquire and who receive the answers to their inquiries, they themselves are places of pilgrimage. Bhavad-vida Bhagavatas Tirtha Bhuta Shayam Tirthu Kurvanti Tirthini Shantastena Gadabritaham. Wherever they go, they are considered to be places of pilgrimage or tirthas that can purify the whole world.
Interestingly, one of the definitions of Dhamma is where Srimad Bhagavatam is recited.
So in so many ways, Prabhupada says that the best welfare work that one can do for the world in general is to broadcast the glories of the Srimad Bhagavatam, to broadcast and make available to people in general these various conversations between the Lords and his devotees. So being literalists that we are, Vaibhavi and I, this motivated us to buy a radio station.
It does help, Prabhuji, because I forgot the name of the Upanishad. It talks about how Krishna gave us different capacities. So it talks about how he gave us the mind, so we could think ourselves as the Lord, separate from the Lord. And then he gave us the power of speech, so we could convince each other that, how good I am. And then Krishna gave us the ears for our future welfare, So until unless you hear Srimad Bhagavatam, I just recently started reading Bhagavatam with my mom in India. And I was, that was this thing that whether you understand or not, just for the 45 minutes you are with me, just hear Bhagavatam and all your questions and all your miseries, you'll just see a drastic change, but just by reading Srimad Bhagavatam.
What are the three components of the spiritual world? Wherever you have these three things, you have the spiritual world. What are those three elements?
Bhagavatam, Ganga, Tulsi.
I was thinking of something a little different.
Okay.
Anybody can jump in and answer. The three B's, you might say the three B's. Wherever you have these three B's, that's what the spiritual world is.
The beats, bro. The beat books.
That's a good guess.
It took me a while. I was thinking that I should not pronounce it as beast.
The spiritual world exists wherever there's Bhagavan, wherever there's the Bhakta,
and
wherever there's Bhakti. So Bhakti begins with the tongue. Ata Sri Krishna Namadi Sevan Mukhi Shayamevas Parati Adaha. Bhakti begins with the tongue. So if you're a neophyte, then you use your tongue to ask questions. If you're advanced, you use your tongue to answer those questions. And anybody else can use their ears to hear the answers to those questions. So Bhakti begins with the tongue. So wherever there's a Bhagavan, wherever there's Bhakta, and wherever there's Bhakti, in other words, wherever there are people using their tongues to inquire of more advanced devotees, and wherever there are more advanced devotees using their tongues to answer those inquiries, that is the spiritual world. Naham tishtami vaikunte yoginam hridayashu yatatishamti madbhakti yatatishamti narada. Krishna says, I'm not in the spiritual world. I'm not in the hearts of the yogis. I am where the devotees sit down and engage in inquiry, questioning and answering about my glories. It says, I come there, I make myself comfortable, I sit there. So whenever you sit down and discuss Bhagavatam, you're not in the material world. You're in the spiritual world. Prabhupada says, just by doing this one thing, sitting down with someone who's a little more advanced, and then inquiring and discussing, it says you get aloofness. You're on the platform of immortality. And if you can parlay that into more and more and more, obviously we're not on the level of being able to be connected with Krishna in that way 24 hours a day, but the whole idea is to get more and more of a taste. So this year, we're more engaged in the service of the Lord than we were this time last year. And of course, it's not just hearing and chanting, but that's where it begins. That's the beginning, that's the middle, that's the end. But for variety, there can be many other services as well throughout the day. But our connection, we invoke the spiritual world through the tongue by inquiring about nature. And that's why in a devotional community, the worst thing is to have people talking mundane topics at the temple or at festivals. We know that many people gather at functions such as last night for social purposes. They go to a function like Diwali or Janmashtami looking to meet people that they only see once or twice a year and to catch up, on all the juicy gossip, catch up on all the tidbits. But those who are serious should avoid those kinds of people, or at least transform their conversations into something more uplifting. Because if questioning and answering about this spiritual topics puts us aloof from material activities, then to hear gossip and complaining or politics is like it's like poison. Who else hasn't spoken yet? Who can we call on?
This is Pavana.
I want to also mention, speaking of Diwali, Pavana led a beautiful kirtan before the event began. We were just kind of sitting around, and it was like 20 to 6, and I asked her to lead the kirtan. She led a beautiful, beautiful kirtan. And then Amrita Sundari, we were calling for you, but we didn't find you at the time of Damodarastakam. So Radhe Sham said, or actually Pavana volunteered her husband. She said, Radhe Sham, and he did a great job. Radhe Sham, if you're there, I want to commend you. It was very, very transcendental, your singing of Damodarastakam and then the kirtan afterwards. So, and thank you for coming all the way from Tooele also. That was great. By the way, we had a good crowd. It was probably a maximum crowd. I don't know how many would you say, Pavana, but it felt safe. I didn't feel like anybody was at risk or anything. You may be on mute. Okay, how many would you say came?
I would say 25 to 30 at the highest.
Yeah, at one time. Yeah, but probably 50 or 60 altogether.
They're coming and going all the time.
Yeah, all new people, all fresh people. Really good. Yeah.
I have just one comment on this. That is, where are we? It talks about in Bhagavad Gita, the personality of Godhead said that in all the Vedas, there is nothing but the urge for searching after him, Lord Krishna. And I see that in my work every day. People are looking for something and they don't really know what it is. And I have the pleasure of maybe directing them in the right direction. But everybody's looking for something more than just material happiness. And oftentimes their difficulties come from exactly that, keeping up with the Joneses and whatever. So I think everybody has an instinct to reconnect with God, and they will search until they find it, or some don't, and that's a tragedy, in my opinion.
You know, a realization came to me when you were making that comment is that most of the inquiries in this material world, and it mentioned about there are thousands and thousands of subject matters for hearing. It directs you where to get food, where to get shelter, where to get sex, and how to defend yourself. But the inquiry itself is just tells you where to go to get that thing. The inquiry itself is, your mind may be unsettled. Okay, where am I going to eat? And then you get the answer, and then your mind is temporarily pacified. But the answer to the question, where am I going to eat, does not satisfy your hunger. You still have to go and follow the instructions and get something to eat. And 2 hours after you've done that, then your mind is again asking, where is something to eat? And then that in itself is not satisfying. And so then you have to go some other place to get something else to eat. And you don't want to eat the same thing all the time. You want some variety. And so this seems very, very much like a mouse on a treadmill, just running faster and faster and faster, trying futilely to get some satisfaction. Whereas there's no satisfaction from receiving the answer to the questions. The mind may be the feverishness of the mind may cool a little bit, but then 2 hours later, the mind starts to get anxious again. Where will I eat? If I don't eat, I'll die. But the beauty is that the questions and answers that we read about in the Bhagavatam directly satisfy the soul. They're not saying you have to go somewhere and eat somewhere or sleep somewhere and make some other arrangement. You just have to sit down and listen to the topics of the Bhagavatam, inquire about them from a more advanced devotee. And that in itself, nothing else is required. That in itself, and that only, will fully satisfy the soul. It's a lot less trouble. It's accessible. It's easy. Here's another point. You can always tell the caliber of men by the subject matter. Is it true?
Absolutely true. I listen to people and what they talk about when they first come in, and usually it's just all over the place because they're nervous and stressed about sitting in front of a psychologist. But I get a lot of information about who they are in that, even though it has nothing to do why they're there. So at least I understand the personality up front.
Super. So when you have Krishna and Arjuna together, is it safe to assume that it's going to be a high subject matter that's being discussed?
Absolutely. It changes everything, and it takes it to a higher level, almost a transcendental. I've had sessions that are absolutely transcendental once we get on the subject of God and turning it over to Him, your troubles, whatever they are, it changes everything.
Hare Krishna.
Go ahead.
Because of Bhagavad Gita, you said Krishna and Arjuna. The level of the conversation and the quality of the questions and answers. I think I must add as follows. In the Bhagavad Gita, we do not find only interaction in terms of questions and answers between Krishna and Arjuna. We find Dhritarashtra asking questions to Sanjaya. And the Bhagavad Gita begins with a question made by Dhritarashtra, and the question is as follows. Dhritarashtra said, "O Sanjaya, after my son and the sons of Pandu assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, desiring to fight, what did they do? And Sanjaya answered this question by giving different answers. But my humble realization, and maybe it is not a coincidence, is that the real answer to this question is the last verse of the Bhagavad Gita, and it is as follows: wherever there is Krishna, the master of all mystics, and wherever there is Arjun, the supreme archer, there will also certainly be opulence, victory, extraordinary power, and morality. That is my opinions. And I could add to what Sanjaya says in this verse. That is my real answer to the first question you asked me in connection with Bhagavad Gita.
That's a really good point. You know, the benefit of realized souls is so great that even if you approach them with a nonsense inquiry,
yeah,
they'll still they'll just it's kind of like I think we've talked about this before. If anybody has experience being interviewed on radio and television, the technique that you use is you don't really listen to the question they ask. You know what you want to say, and you just say what you want to say. You pretend to be answering the questions, but you're not really so much answering the questions as you're making sure that in the compressed time period in which you're on the air, you're going to communicate the things that you most need to communicate. And so it's interesting. All Dhritarashtra is concerned about is the physical well-being of his sons. That's all he cares about. You know, he's coming from the most shallow point of view possible. And he doesn't really want to know about spiritual life and bhakti yoga or anything. He just wants to know, are my sons safe and are they going to win this war? But he's asking it of a realized soul. And so Sanjaya takes him right to where you said, to the last verse. Yatra yogeshwaro krishna yata parto dhanurgara. That's the beauty of encountering. It says 4 types of people come to devotional service. Those who are distressed, inquisitive, those who are in knowledge, or seekers of wealth. And so many conversations about Bhagavatam are those who are in knowledge or inquisitive. They approach the right authority. But there are also conversations where those who are seekers of wealth, where those who are distressed, are also, by their good fortune, approaching qualified people. And the prime example is Dhruva. Dhruva, he just wanted wealth. That's all he wanted. And yet he had the good fortune of going to Narada Muni with his inquiries about wealth, and as a result, Narada Muni got him onto the level of pure devotional service. What other instances are there of someone whose initial question was not at all about spiritual topics, but the person that they addressed the question to was the right person to take them to where they needed to go? Any other instances or examples of that? I'm thinking of Rahugana, right? Rahugana, just his question is, why are you bouncing my palanquin? You know, not a very deep soul-searching question, right? He says, tell me why I shouldn't cut your head off, you big oaf. That's pretty much the opening question that Maharaj Rukan asked Jad Bharat. And yet, at the end, he bows down, surrenders, and accepts Jad Bharat as his guru. We also have these incredible turnarounds in the Bhagavatam. Any other instance people can think of?
We have Chitraketu, who wanted a son from Parvat Muni and Angira Muni.
Ashok, yes, that is a good.
Very good. Very good. Just briefly, what was the storyline on that?
So King Chitraketu was very much attached to having an heir to his kingdom, and Parvat Muni, who is Narad Muni's friend, and they visit his kingdom, and they try to dissuade him from having that worldly desire, but he's very much wanting to have a son, so they bless him, and they also warn him that he will give you both pleasure and sadness, and he has a lot of queens, so the queen who gave birth obviously became the center of attraction for him. And the other queens got very much jealous because earlier King Chitraketu was kind to them and he was treating everybody equally and with respect. He was aware of their sentiments, but now he was just focusing on this one queen who gave him the prince. And so they all joined together and gave poison to the prince. And so the prince is dead, and then the two sages walk in again. And he's like, look at what has happened. You gave me the boon, and the child has left us. And they give the power to the child. He comes back to life and he starts speaking, and he speaks philosophy. He's like, who are you lamenting for? I might have been your son, but you're not my eternal parents. Similarly, I'm not your eternal child. Every birth we have had different sets of parents, and every birth we have had different family members. So this relationship is just based on the body. Our real connection is with the Lord. And because of him, we have relationships amongst ourselves. And King Chitraketu is just overwhelmed, and he just turns around, and then he asks the real question to Parvat Muni and Angira Muni, and they guide him. And he attaches himself to Lord Sankarsana's lotus feet.
Excellent. And then also, I think we have to cite ourselves. We have those of us who, in my generation, who ended up following through the Prabhupada, we weren't in the category of people in knowledge. Many of us weren't in the category of even being inquisitive. We were in distress. We were suffering, and some or other we approached Prabhupada, and we did. Prabhupada used to comment, people don't know how to question, but it's okay if you don't know how to question, as long as you meet the person who knows how to answer. And even if he's not answering your question, even if you didn't know the right questions to ask, if you're willing to listen to his answers, then your life is gonna be successful. It says in the Bhagavad Gita, Anyatum evam ajananta shrutpanebhyo pashate tepi tachitarantya mritu shruti parayanaha. Anyatu evam ajananta. Ajananta means without knowledge. Without direction. They don't know what to ask. They don't know what to do. But they're not demons. They're not demons. Demons, they do things, but they do them without reference to what's proper and what's improper, what's authorized and what's authored. But they're in ignorance, but at the same time they're innocent. So Anya too, the Anya, Krishna's been talking about great seekers, great transcendentalists, people who are interested in improving their lives and purifying their lives. But then he says, Anya, aside from those who are inquisitive, aside from those who are in knowledge, Anya tu evam ajana, there are those who are in ignorance, don't know what's what, they don't know up from down, spirit from matter. But shrutpanebhyo pashate, they are willing to listen. And the result of that is that mritu shruti parayana. Shruti, by hearing from the right source, even though you weren't necessarily the most qualified disciple, because you stumbled upon the qualified spiritual master, you had that good fortune, mritu shruti parayanaha, you transcend. You take the path which transcends birth and death. I have to put myself in that category. I don't know about you, but I'm definitely in that category. Any comments here? I just have one note here. Prabhupada says in this connection, there's a difference. Maybe someone else wants to comment on this first. It says there's a difference between karma and karma yoga. Anybody like to comment on that statement by Prabhupada? The difference between karma and karma yoga.
So karma is basically related to the reactions of the actions we're doing, but karma yoga is the process by which we use the same activities to like dovetail it to Krishna, which is the meaning of the yoga, which is uniting our desires with the will of Krishna and performing activities according to that.
Exactly.
A lot of people, they often claim themselves as a karma yogi by just saying that, okay, I work so much. And it's not about the amount of the work that you perform in a day, it's the mindset that you use while you're performing. And whom do you consider the final object at work?
Krishna says, karmani avada kadashte, work without the fruits of the work. So there are many people, they work and they give in charity, they do pujas, they spend a lot of they invest a lot of their present currency in order to get a future position in the heavenly planets. And that's basically karma. And basically karma means how to invest your time and your assets now so that you get them back thousands of times over in the future. But karma yoga means you invest your time and your energy in such a way as to get love of God. Mat karma kreen, mat paramo, mad bhakta, Sanga varjita, giving up attachment for fruitive works. Mat karma kreen, mad karma kreen. Mat means Krishna, kreen means do. So karma yoga means mat karma kreen, mat paramo. It means to work for the higher cause of satisfying Krishna and becoming detached from temporary fruits in this material world. Mad bhakta sangha nirvara sarvabhuteshu yasa mamiti pandava. Rather than going to a better place within this material world, yasa mamiti pandava, one should use those same energies and abilities towards going back to home, back to Godhead. And then, of course, having done so, one never returns to this material world. So that's the difference between karma and karma yoga, isn't it?
Yes, Prabhuji. And one example that I want to share here is after coming into Krishna consciousness, we should think that, okay, I'm not the doer, I'm just following the instructions of the spiritual master and trying to serve the devotees and serve the purpose of spreading Krishna consciousness. And if we can surrender everything to Krishna, then we can definitely get liberated from the fruit of that karma, whether it's good or bad. We should just surrender everything to Krishna, that I'm not the doer, I'm just following the instruction. That way there won't be any good karma or the bad karma. And especially for the grahasthas like us, as I mentioned earlier as well, like if we can devote our time in a way that we can bring our kids and our family to the Krishna consciousness, that serves the purpose. Even though we'll be grahasthas, still it's a service. And the problem here is that sometimes we get so much attached to this material life and to the family that we forget the whole purpose of our life. And the example I want to share is that there were two bees, and there was a small bucket, bowl full of honey, and those two flies, they come. One of them comes and sees the honey, and and gets so attracted that she wants to enjoy it so much that she just jumped right into that bowl, and she starts eating and eating. She's enjoying, but then she realizes that all her legs, her wings are all stuck in this honey, and she's not able to fly back, and she eventually is trapped and she dies. But there is another bee, or that fly, who comes, sees the honey, and she sits right at the edge of that bowl, and she will take out that sting, taste it, fly back, do the things, come back again, taste it, fly back. That's how, if we can keep our mindset that okay, this, because we were so degraded that we were born in this life, otherwise we would have been to that same heavenly planet. But if we can still keep our consciousness in a way surrendered to Krishna, that this material life, our family, kids, all, we are attracted to it, these are like that bowl of honey. But we should not get so much attracted that we are totally trapped in this attraction, and we are just so busy with earning money, serving our wife, serving our kids, that we forget Krishna. We should enjoy this life just like that fly was doing, sitting at the edge of it, tasting the honey, and then in the same way we should serve our purpose or do our duties of being a husband or a father or the mother, but should always keep Krishna in the center. That way we can enjoy this without getting trapped into it. That's what I want to share on this point.
Really good point. It reminds me also of another example given in the Bhagavatam that connects with bees too. It was a problem with living the life of a jealous householder where one is competing with all other householders for a limited amount of material resources. It's like when it's time for the bees to enjoy the honey, there are certain openings in the honeycomb, and the bee that gets there first, he sticks his head into the honeycomb and he starts drinking the honey. And at first he's enjoying like anything. But then there's only a limited amount of openings for a limited amount of bees. So after those openings are taken, then other bees come and they can't, there's no opening. It's taken by the first arrivers. So the bees behind, they're stinging the bees that are stuck in those openings. So the bee from the front end is getting the honey, but then he's getting stung on the back end from the bees that are arriving late, and they also want to enjoy. So that's one of the problems about being a householder and basing your value and your success in life on enjoying the honey of this material world. Because when everybody has that mentality, it creates glanir bhavati bharata. It creates scarcities, actually. When everyone's greed is out of control, then there are never enough resources, there's never enough honey for everyone to go around, because everybody has an unlimited desire to enjoy. And there will eventually be the haves and the have-nots. But the beauty about bringing up as a parent, introducing your children to Krishna consciousness is there's no limit. We're not talking about limited resources here. The Bhagavad Gita is unlimited. It's always accessible. You don't have to have a certain set of conditions in order to achieve it. To get the things that you think you need for household or life, you need a house, you need mortgage, you need utilities, you need a car, you need a job, you need so many things. Your so-called physical well-being is dependent upon so many things. But in drinking the honey, atavasya paramboja, makaranda liham, drinking the honey from the lotus feet of the Lord, you just need to sit down with a digital or print copy of the Bhagavatam and discuss it. And all inner desires of the heart are fulfilled without cost, without travel, without conditions, without strife or anxiety or stress. So this is really, really giving the best gift to your children, is to do your utmost to give your children a taste for just sitting down and discussing the Bhagavatam. A very good point. Everybody made good points. Does anybody want to make we don't have Onkar to give us a wrap today, but does anybody want to summarize? And then we'll go to Rakesh for the final kirtan this morning.
I can also see a guest in Prabhu's screen. So we want to, being a guest at Rakesh Prabhu's house, you are also a guest for the entire Salt Lake City congregation. So we welcome you to Salt Lake.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for sitting in.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, that's my brother-in-law visiting us with his family from India. They came here last week. So the kids, all the kids are going to lead the kirtan today. And do you want to share something or comment something?
No, it's good to be part of this meeting. So it's good for me.
Nice. Are you surprised to find that people in America are so interested in spiritual life? Not all people, obviously, but are you surprised to find that someone who came from India to America, obviously for material improvement, is also pursuing spiritual perfection as well?
Yes, he is a little surprised to see.
Yeah, honestly, it's good to see that. Yes, while we are, far from India, like still we have lots of people, discussing about the Gita, Bhagavad Gita, and Lord Krishna. So it's good to see.
I have a Gujarati friend in Los Angeles. I've known him for 40 years. His name is Chiman, and he's a very he's been attending iskcon, chanting japa. He's initiated now. He just got initiated within the last year by Lokanath Swami. He lives in Diamond Bar. So his relatives from India came to visit. First thing they said, they wanted to go to Las Vegas, and he said, I don't want to go to Las Vegas. He said, I've been living in America, California for 30 years. I've never been to Vegas. And they said, well, why did you come to America then? Well, I'm looking forward to that kirtan by all the kids. Anybody have any last words before we have a Raghav Kirtan?
Yeah, I would like to summarize a little bit about what we discussed today. And again, since I'm in the category where I'm just listening, I'm not in the category even to ask questions for totally forget about any answers from me. But I was listening, and the analogy or the example that comes in my mind is, in a layman's term, is when the kids, they go to school, or even in the offices when we are discussing projects, there are different people who are at a different level of understanding of the business or the system. Then the quality of the questions they ask is different, even though the person answering is the same. It's the same teacher in the class, or it's the same business users clarifying the requirement, but based on the quality of the question, we see different answers. In the same way, it depends on the inquirer, even though the guru or the person answering the questions is the same, but because the depth of the inquirer's knowledge is different, that's why the answers that we get are different, even though it's the same person. In the same way, Bhagavatam, it has the answers for all the questions, whether somebody wants material gain or whether somebody wants peace of mind, it has everything. Whether somebody wants spirituality, it has everything. The Bhagavatam, if we keep reading it and try to be associated with devotees, we can get answers to all the questions. It just depends on our quality or our understanding, and based on that, we will have the different versions of the answers. And to me, because they are coming from the right source, if we follow the disciplic succession, all the answers are perfect. There is nothing that, oh, this one was better than the other. It just depends on my understanding, and because the person answering the question has to come down or go up to the level of the inquirer, that's how they have to answer, to make sure the person asking the question understands it. So that's my understanding, that all of the questions are great, all the answers are the same. We cannot differentiate between them. And if we inquire about Krishna, nothing greater than possible than answering or questioning about Krishna and the glories of the Krishna.
And that brings us to circle right around to the verse today. Munya saduprishtaham bhavadbhir lok yat krita Krishna sambasho yatmashu prasidati. O sages, I have been justly questioned by you, says Sutta Goswami. Your questions are worthy because they relate to Lord Krishna and so have relevance to the world's welfare. Only questions of this sort are capable of completely satisfying the self. We had a young lady at the Sunday feast in Spanish Fork last week, and she said, "Do you mind if I ask you a question?" And I said, "Do I mind?" I said, for Hare Krishna, when someone asks them a question, they are just as happy as if you offered them $5,000. So that's what we're here for. That is the greatest pleasure of a Hare Krishna, is to ask them a question. And don't be surprised if no matter what you ask them, they're going to take you to Krishna, because they know that only Krishna can satisfy all inquiries, all desires, all longings, and get you to where you need to be.
Well, I have a question.
Okay.
Caru Prabhu, I have a question. Prabhu, my question is related to the following. I do not know if I am wrong. Please correct me if I am wrong, but I compare questions to problems, because if the question manifests, it's because I have a doubt and I have a problem to be solved. So my question is it that there is a moment in the life of a devotee that he will stop asking questions because he already found a perfect peace and spiritual prosperity?
No, because it's not about accumulating knowledge and facts. It's not really about learning new things. That's why a lot of devotees do actually come to rest. They have initial movement because they're learning new things. They're seeing things in a different way. They're giving up bad habits, and so there's that enthusiasm in the beginning. But if you're only enthusiastic because of the things you're learning, or because of the new things that you're doing, or the new experiences that you're having, when those experiences begin to repeat themselves, then you're going to find that your movement is going to slow down, and you may even roll to a stop and get stuck there. And we do see this phenomena of devotees, old devotees, who have been stuck, who have soaked and soured for decades. And so you have to understand what the purpose of inquiries and questions is. I mean, you may not understand it in the beginning, but at some point you need to pick up on the fact that it's about purification. It really doesn't matter whether you've heard it before or not. You're going to get purified every time you hear it. If you have the attitude, "Oh, I've heard this before," then that means your spiritual life is rolling to a standstill, and your enthusiasm is at a dangerously low level. But if you approach every Bhagavatam class, every online forum, with the idea that I'm going to get purified, my heart is going to eject and remove and exercise unwanted things, and so here's a wonderful opportunity for me to make progress back to home, back to Godhead, then one will never have the attitude that anything is old or stale. One can always say, continually enthusiastic. I mentioned Chiman as one of my oldest friends. His best friend was Pranjivan. And Pranjivan passed away maybe 10 years ago by a heart attack. But Pranjivan, he personified this attitude. If there was one person who understood that Bhagavatam discussion is about purification, it's not about learning or committing new facts, it was Pranjivan. Whenever you would be with Pranjivan, he always, no matter what it was, he would always say, "Do you have 5 minutes for Bhagavatam?" or 5 minutes for Gita? So we'd always sit down. You could always count on it. Whenever you were with Pranjivan, you would sit down and you would discuss Gita. And not only that, but you would say something like, "You're not the body." And Pranjivan, Now, he'd heard that 5,000 times before. But all you had to do was say, aham brahmasmi, you know.
Yes, yes.
And because he was hearing in the right way, as a speaker, you couldn't help but continue be more and more inspired, because even though he was taking the role of the student, he was also teaching the teacher the value of purification and the purpose of the conversation in the first place. Everybody loved Pranjivan. Everybody loved him. He was the perfect student, but in being the perfect student, he also was the perfect teacher as well. And we still miss him. We miss him like anything 10 years later. But I don't think we want to delay everybody in their Sunday morning any further. I try to answer your question as succinctly as I can.
Yeah,
But
thank
pretty
you very
much
Wonderful answer.
pretty much we've come full circle here. So we could go on all day. We could go on all week. There's no question of that. But I just want to not take up too much of your time, because I know that you're all busy and you have things on your schedule today. And we're also really excited about having what Rakesh described as the kids sing kirtan. So let's go to that.
Rakesh, you.
So how does it feel to have your cousins there chanting alongside you, Subi? Yeah. I know Rakesh one time said that he owes his bhakti attraction to his wife, because on his wife's side of the family, he said there's a lot of bhakti, a lot of devotion. So is that true of having your guests in the house or helping the devotional atmosphere there?
Yes, Prabhuji, that's really true. And every night we are doing kirtan and aarti for Damodarashtam, and then all the kids sing their version of aartis at least 1 hour every night. So it's great.
Wow.
And
Sounds.
and, and my brother-in-law, he also plays drum and plays harmonium, and he sings really well. So
What
yeah,
is it? What is his first name?
Amit.
Amit?
Yes.
Amit. Nice. Nice. Bhagavan, Bhakta, and Bhakti right there in your house. Everything you need to go back home, back to Godhead, and take all the children with you. Wonderful.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Haribo. Jai ho. Jai ho. So the first kirtan was led by Shivan, and the last kirtan was led by Subi. And in the intermediate period, we had a lot of great realizations and contributions by all of our various members. Pavana, Radhesham, Rakesh pitched in, Vijaya Krishna contributed, as well as Kapil family, Amrita Sundari, Kruti Nagaraj. We had Sarabi join us for a while there too. So thank you so much for everybody, and I hope it's been profitable and satisfying to your innermost spiritual self, and we'll look forward to getting your association often in the future. Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyavicha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare